So, Marie-Louise, let's hear about the Red Velvet Revelry Supper Club. I would love to hear, what is it all about? What goes on? What do you do? What do you eat? What do you talk about? What happens?
Well, it was the very first one. I've been doing this project, Red Velvet Revelry, for a while now, and we've done different versions. We did a live stage show, we've done a cabaret, we've done a bring your own bottle in a church hall. So this time we were at a very nice bistro. And my dream was to kind of bring together a group of women so that we could have a really nice meal and a bit of Prosecco and a laugh, and that I would tell some stories about women and sexuality, and that I was kind of hoping that we would all just be able to kind of have a laugh and go, oh yeah, and all this kind of thing. And that's exactly what happened. So we had this lovely meal, and in between I told some stories and sang a few songs, funny songs really, about things that you like and things that you don't like, and it was just good fun. It was good fun, and it was a little bit edgy as well, because I've been doing this project collecting women's happy stories about sexuality because I wanted to hear them.
Yeah.
And I thought other women might like to hear them as well. So sometimes it's really hard to tell when I'm telling a story. If somebody's concentrating really hard, they can look quite serious. And it might look as if they're horrified. And of course, I'm projecting all kinds of things. So, is this too much? Is this too much sex? Is this not enough sex? What's So that's part of the learning for me, is to trust that if I'm offering an evening like this, I have to trust that the women that come along will roll with whatever it is, and I judge them by the feedback and the laughter and the questions and a bit of shouting out, I have to say. So that was good. That's a good sign.
Excellent. Yeah.
Quips from the back of the room. So
brilliant.
Yeah. And at the end of the night, I was saying, I'd really like to do this again if anybody'd like to do it. So there was a general feeling that, yes, this was the sort of thing we'd like to do more of. And I think it was a first time. So I was talking a bit about some of my very gentle stories about my kind of my own experiences. And I think some women were ready to, everybody was chatting amongst themselves in between when we were eating, and a lot of people didn't know each other. So it was an opportunity to have a bit of chat after some of the stories about women's own experiences, or just very light, and just whatever the person that was there wanted to do. So it was great. It worked just the way I hoped, really.
Brilliant. So you had that vision, and it kind of met that need. So met your own need and other people's as well. And I'm curious to know, what kind of person goes to a dinner to talk about positive women's sexuality? Is there an age group? Is there a type of person, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, it turned out there was,
right,
and it's partly to do with because I've been doing this work. Some people came because they know that I'm a storyteller and they wanted to come to a kind of night out, and they'd heard that the storytelling was good fun. So there was that.
Right.
But definitely there was to opt into something that even mentions sexuality is it's more than you might. It's more than just going out for a normal night out.
Yeah.
So it was people quite a lot of people who came were people who knew me, or they knew of me through somebody else. So somebody who had come to something I'd done before would bring their pal, and somebody brought half a dozen people, and they want to bring more people next time. So it was a combination of a connection with me. So there was a certain level of trust, really.
Yeah. So how do we go on? Carry on.
A bit of curiosity about the subject, and it was presented in a really nice format. It was really great food, and the atmosphere was good fun.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I think because it's so to say about the age group, So because it was people who I knew about, they were I would say it was women mostly in their 50s and 60s, and one or two in their 40s, and the youngest person was 22.
Brilliant. Oh, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
I adore that idea that you have a whole range of generations through the decades.
Yeah.
So
and people, I invited people to come even if they didn't have a chum who wanted to come with them. So there was quite a few women who came on their own who I introduced to other people that were there. So everybody had somebody to chat to, and it worked really well.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Brilliant. I love this idea. Talking about sexuality, sexual experiences in a positive way that feels empowering to ourselves in a safe and trusted group of people who are also sharing as much or as little as they want to.
Yeah.
And that's
and light, it was light-hearted.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of laughter, there was a lot of recognition of experiences that a lot of people shared, and I think there was some stuff that might have been a little bit edgy for some people, but I I kind of set it up, that part of what I want to do is I want to say that everybody's experience is valid, and it may be something you like or you don't like, but let's be in a space of curiosity and non-judgmental experience. That's what I would like to see more of. And I think as it goes on, I think next time people will chat more because they'll be a bit more comfortable. And I think I'll have one or two maybe prompt questions to kind of, so there can be a bit of chat if that needs a bit of facilitation. But very light touch. Yeah.
Nice choice of words. Brilliant. And what I'm thinking as you explain that and as you talk about it, and I can hear the passion there for it, and the interest and the drive that I can feel from you to do this and set this up. It's really evident in the way that you talk about it, which is beautiful. But what do you think an average person like myself, almost 43, going along to one of those events, or just being in a trusted group of women anywhere in the world, what could I or anybody gain from talking about my sexual experiences in a loving, in a light-hearted way, in a positive way? What is that going to do for me?
Well, I think a lot of it is about normalisation of that we've all had to find our way as sexual human beings, from being a teenager to being into midlife, and a lot of that we've done on our own in a way. We had to find out who you were, and it wasn't certainly for me, it wasn't a shared experience with my friends when my sexuality was developing. And I've got a story about wearing a rah-rah skirt and have my bottom pinched when I was 14 or 15, and and even just me talking about a rah-rah skirt, I had to explain it to anybody that hadn't been a fashion icon in the 80s. And but all the kind of memories it brought back. So there was this sense of, oh yeah, remember what it feels like to be a teenager, and that thing of you don't really know what you're doing, and all this kind of stuff, so there was that shared thing, which for some people could be painful, it could be lovely, but there was something about me just talking about something that was quite specific, and yet it became kind of universal of that stage of life. So it led to reflection and discussion about that without asking anybody to reveal anything. So I think that sense
Yeah.
of, yeah, that was tricky, and I did manage that, and here I am, I spoke about somebody who had a number of relationships and had ended up surprisingly at what most people would consider quite an old age in a relationship where she's incredibly happy and sexually fulfilled. And for a lot of women, they've never heard anybody talking about anything like that.
Yeah.
Kind of,
yeah.
It's something about, there's those things which you recognize as part of your experience, and then there's things that you don't recognize as part of your experience, but it opens up the possibility that they exist.
Yeah.
So and there was quite a lot of women who I knew were single, and who I was trying to kind of value the experience of being a sexual person, not in a relationship as well. That is part of who you are and part of your life, and it's not just certain versions are being acknowledged.
Yeah. For each of us to have a voice, to feel valid in our own experiences. And in that way, I see a lot of parallels between the work that we both do. I'm talking about menopause a lot, from peri right through to post-menopause and beyond, and that individuality of experience around that is really powerful for any woman to hear, that their experience is normal for them. It can be quite a revelation, and then a bit like with what you're talking about, it sets the seed, or it allows other people to start talking. It allows them to be heard and recognize themselves in other people a little bit, and to also hear that there are differences, and that's okay. That's how it's supposed to be. That's the normal bit as well. Yeah. And talking about menopause, perimenopause, obviously we've talked about this ourselves in various conversations, and one of the reasons why I wanted to invite you on to do this today is because you are so honest in your sharing, and you are so keenly self-aware, and I think that's wonderful. It's beautiful for your experience, and to be able to see yourself as you're changing through those stages, and to recognize that there's a constant within that, and there's also that change within yourself as well, and to allow all that to happen is a big thing, isn't it? It is a big thing. So one of the big questions I've got for you today is, has perimenopause changed you, do you think, and in what ways? And I'm not really thinking of physical symptoms as such, but do you feel a change within yourself?
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been in perimenopause for a very long time, and it's been a really important time in my life, actually. There was a time where I started to have symptoms which I was becoming ragingly angry. I mean, ragingly out of control angry in my, this was years and years and years ago. And I went to the doctor and I said, my hormones are out of control. I'm terrified I'm going to stab somebody.
Mm-hmm.
What should I do? I'm sure it's my hormones changing. And the doctor put me on Prozac.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was kind of frightened, I took it. I didn't think it was really the answer to anything. And when I went on and I told some of my friends and women that I knew that were my age, I discovered they were all on it. All of them were on Prozac or some kind of anxiety tablet or antidepressant, and And for me, I was only on it for a couple of weeks, and I came right off it because it definitely wasn't for me, and I knew it wasn't the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And what I discovered eventually was that actually I was really, really angry.
Yeah.
And it would come out when I was premenstrual, and it wasn't as straightforward as I was having perimenopausal symptoms.
Yeah.
And so that started a process of, well, what am I going to do about that? I mean, so I did some cognitive behavioural therapy just out of a book to kind of change my thinking. And there were certain things in my life I couldn't change. And eventually I did make some other changes when it was possible.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of started me on that journey of, I think at the beginning I thought it was all out of my control.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no control of my hormones, and they turn me into somebody else. And I had to kind of get to the point of it, there's actually things in my life that I'm not attending to that are now presenting themselves, and I have to pay attention.
Yeah.
And that's quite a different thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quite a different thing. And I think as somebody who's always been interested in health and the politics of health and actually feminism, the idea that I had no control of it seemed, I just needed to look at that about, and so but since then I've been a bit frightened of menopause.
Mm-hmm.
But I've really developed a really positive intention of coming through it and dealing with whatever comes up, because I know from my family, like my mum and my sisters, that they've had quite difficult experiences, but all different.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not assuming that I'll have the same as them. And I want to make choices all the time about things. So for me, I've been using growing red clover sprouts for about 5 years, and I find that's been incredibly helpful. And just even if it was a placebo, it's incredibly helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives me a sense of, this is something that I do that helps balance my hormones every day, and that's, so I suppose for me, it's all about agency. It's all about, this is something that I'm going to go through, but I have choices I can make about how I experience it. And if I need more help, I get it, So that's why I've been in touch with you, because you are somebody who offers an understanding of menopause, about it being different for different people, and that there are all different things that you can do that at the very least gives a sense of not being so out of control, which is obviously a thing for me. I've said it about 5 times.
It's very, very common though, that phrase of feeling out of control. It comes up so often. It really does, because it's so real. It feels like we're going off the rails somewhere. Can you think back? Sorry, I'm just thinking of what you were saying there of feeling out of control, and then talking about that agency, that self-realization that, there is something I can do here. What was the switch for that? Do you remember what it was?
I think it was having a kind of crescendo of fear that led me to do something that didn't feel right.
Right.
And then, like doing something else somebody else suggested, like the tablets were, well, this is what everybody does. And and realizing that felt totally not comfortable for me, and that I find my own way of doing it. So then I went away and discovered, well, what would be my way of doing it?
Right.
And actually, when I did that, all those particular symptoms went away.
Yeah, amazing.
So so there's been different phases of different things going on, but different physical symptoms and things like that. But that decision to not just do what somebody else thinks is the right answer, because it felt so wrong, and doing something about it, that was the switch.
Right.
And I think it led me to, as I say, make decisions eventually that were to change things that I definitely wasn't happy with, that I didn't think I could change at another point in my life. And also coming, with that came a new confidence of I am going to make choices like that in all areas of my life.
Yeah.
And a definite sort of midlife thing of, here are the things that, and it very much comes into my work, here are the things that I've been not allowed to do, not allowed to say, not allowed, because I've been keeping some internal rules from when I was a teenager or something, but it's that ability to reflect on, I've been living in a certain way. Do I still want to do that now in my 50s? Or is it worth reviewing and questioning, do I believe that? Is that true? Do I still want to do that? Who am I doing that for? All of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I often find those are pretty powerful questions, and they can help us really see where some of those blocks lie, in getting over that. For some people, that can make the switch between feeling out of control and realizing there is some agency that I have here. But it takes, do you find that it can take a lot of, I'm kind of leading you with that question, I can hear it in my voice, but I recognize in other people, is what I'm trying to say, that I see in them a lot of courage, and I take a lot of inspiration from what I see, that courage to question what's been going on for them up to that point, what's gone on in the past, and the courage to see that there's something different. And I find a lot of strength for myself, not only for my work to keep going, but personally. Yeah. I was wondering where you sit with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would absolutely agree. It does take courage. And even with the work that I'm doing, like it's edgy for me to talk about sex.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always checking, have I gone too far? Because it's my boundaries. I don't know about anybody else's.
Yeah.
And so,
of course.
But there's no. It definitely does take courage, which is a kind of life choice in terms of, do I stay where I am and I'm not happy anyway, or do I move forward and it's uncomfortable and it's a bit scary? I've learned that it's much better to take the risk and do that thing that, like, for me, I don't want to get in trouble. Which is, if to say that out loud at 54, it's like, well, that's like a small child saying that,
But it's a real feeling.
What happens if I get in trouble? What does that look like?
Yeah. And that needs addressing, doesn't it? That needs listened to, not like beaten away into the corner. Oh, that's a small child, I don't need to listen to that. But really listening and saying, okay, that's a valid thought. Yeah. What is that voice saying? What is she saying to me? Yeah.
So the more you live like that, though, the more that's how you want to live.
Right.
And seeing other women who do that is really important. I think one of the things that made me, when I started taking the Prozac and I realized how many other women of my age were on it, I was so horrified. So, and they hadn't ever spoken about it before. It was only because I was talking about it that it came out. And I just thought, what's going on?
And of course, some women will need that support. It's going to be the right choice for many of them.
And it's the thing, it's the thing for them that will help them. But for me, I was just concerned that so many people that I knew were anxious and depressed and unhappy, and
well, we know it's been a misused tool. We can say that factually. It's been recognized that that's the case. And when you're seeing your friends going through that, and you're in that same situation,
well, I think
there's something going wrong there.
Yeah, I think what was shocking to me was that I didn't know that they weren't okay.
Yeah.
And yet they were all on these tablets, and where for me, because I am quite open, and I cry very easily, and I do not mask my feelings very well. I was really upset that so many people were sort of struggling, and it just showed me that for me that wasn't going to be the answer, and it wasn't a judgment of them. And not everybody can change their situation. People feel that they've got to just manage their life, and whatever helps them to do that is a useful tool at that point. So I suppose back at my work, what I want to do is knowing what that, I do know a little bit of what that's like, to feel that there are no other options, and but having found a different way forward, it's not that I'm an evangelical and everybody's got to do what I do.
Exactly, yeah.
But I think every time I hear of a story of a woman that does something that I wouldn't have thought of, or I couldn't have done, or that is surprising or funny, or, especially around sexuality, because that's does. It's just offering some more different versions of life, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to be interesting to see, and I'm going to welcome it in, as these changes of how we're dealing and talking about menopause as a whole, how that changes for the next few generations as they come through. And I'm doing my best to try to normalize this conversation in the same way that you are. Many a time I've sat around cafe tables and restaurants talking about menopause. I've never sung about it, but I wouldn't inflict that on anyone. But it's going to be, I feel like there's a leading edge of change that we're both on in different ways, of bringing about a change of attitude around this, and an attitude in a way of global thinking, really, not just the individual woman, but the way that we all talk about it, the way we all deal with it.
Yeah, and I'm increasingly managing to hear, a few more women's stories about their menopause experience, and really interestingly, I've spoken to quite a few women who will say, "Oh well, I just went through it and I didn't." I was fine. I just sort of came out the other end, and they're very dismissive of that. Very, there's the women who are really struggling, and then the women who have managed to come through it and feel, they don't feel scathed by it. They're just, it's just been part of their life. Even those stories, they're sort of apologetic, or
yes,
not celebrating the fact that they've come through. They're just like, it's quite dismissiff. So that, to me, that's really interesting, because I really want to hear those stories of, well, where are the women that have come through the menopause and they're on the other side, and they're not, miserable and uncomfortable, and like they're just getting on with their life, and it's been they're into the next phase. They're not really giving it too much attention, and I think that's a legacy from the way that we used to deal with it.
Absolutely, yeah, I would agree.
Said the better kind of thing.
Yeah. Don't talk about it. It was always, for me growing up, it was something I didn't feel I could ask about, because it was hush hush. It was brushed under the table. There was sort of shame and secrecy around it, and that is going to have a legacy that we're trying to change now. Massive impact on the whole world, how it's dealt with, and that whole idea, it's a very westernized approach of menopause, as it taking something away from us, as it's not something to talk about, that it is something to brush under the carpet as much as possible. And if you can just get through it, then that's great, and we'll not talk about it. Very, very Western. And looking at other cultures, they see it as almost like a step up in society. that we're into being the crone, with, you know, all these different sort of archetypes that we have available to us. And yeah, traditionally for us, it's always been something that we're losing, we're on the decline, something that's being taken away from us. And a question that I always like to ask people is, in these kind of conversations, don't go asking random people on the street this, but only people who I can talk to normally and normalize this conversation. But what do you plan, if anything, what do you hope or plan to gain from menopause as a whole?
I mean, I think just menstruating has been, you know, 30 odd years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
That I've been trying to slightly manage it and not leak out and not make a fuss. And
yeah.
You know, I am the person that goes to stay with somebody and I always stain the bed sheets, or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid to sit on a white couch when I go to somebody's
Mm-hmm.
house, you know.
Right.
So I think for me, it'd be nice to just not ever have to worry about that again.
Yeah.
Which is a very it's a very practical thing, because I've got to the stage now, every time I have a period, I think, well, I wonder how many I've got left, or, you know, so it's a live thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to know that part had come to an end would be quite nice. Quite, you know, I don't have to sort of go, oh yeah. So although it's been happening all these years, I'm very bad at knowing when it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to have kind of a sense of that is not something that I have to manage.
Mm. That's understandable. Yeah.
And I really want to come out the end of it and say I did it and it wasn't a total nightmare. That's my dream, is to say, look, yeah, you know, that it had its moments, but really, you know, it's something that is like part of my life that I've come through, and now I'm into a different phase.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it's going to go, but at the moment it is a bit of a threat. It is a bit of a, you know, what if this gets out of control? At the moment, I'm fine. What if it comes, which is a bit like labour, actually, you know, that giving birth, there have been certain points that I felt like I was managing it and I was in tune with my body, and times that I wasn't. And it's a similar sort of thing of, I want to give my body the best chance to come through it, physically and psychologically, but I don't want to turn into somebody I'm not in order to make that happen.
Yeah.
And I would like to be a hopeful story for somebody else one day.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I think you're already doing that, to be honest. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.